Thank you. Thank you, Carol, Faye, and Cindy. What a beautiful start to our morning together and a prelude for this service. I'm Marianne O'Dowd. I'm your service leader today. And let us begin our time here together with gratitude and open hearts. After the events of this week, I thought we could all use a dose of something to sustain our spirits. I'm not exactly sure what that is. So in the absence of any magical or supernatural powers, I'm going to offer some words, also by Emily Dickinson, which was a total coincidence. Hope is the thing with feathers. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul and sings the tune without the words and never stops at all. And sweetest in the gale is heard, and sore must be the storm that could abash the little bird that keep so many warm. I've heard it in the chillest land and in the strangest sea, yet never in extremity it asked a crumb of me. Please silence your devices if you haven't already done so. And it is our custom to extend a special welcome to anyone who is visiting for the first time or for the first time in a while. And if you're comfortable doing so, please introduce yourself. And we'll start to my right over here. Anybody care to introduce themselves? Stand. Kind of these. Oh, Cindy. Yes, Faye.
I'd love to introduce my dear friend, Faye Seaman. She's the harpist from the symphony session of Birch Creek. And she and I have been performing together for about 3 decades now.
Welcome.
Yes.
And thank you. Anyone else? Jamie.
I'm Jamie Henry, a member of this fellowship, and I would like to welcome everybody out in YouTube land.
Oh, hello.
I do that occasionally when there's not a whole lot of announcements, so I don't want to take up too much airtime, but especially to our friend David Taylor down in Beaumont, Texas. Hello, David.
Hello, David. Okay. Anyone else? Yes. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for welcoming the people we don't see in the room here. This morning, we are honored to welcome guest speaker, Reverend Karen Sandberg, a retired hospice chaplain who has been a guest speaker here at our fellowship on many occasions. You can read more about her in your order of service, and you'll hear from her shortly. And as we already have witnessed, we have some special musical guests with us here today, joining pianist Carol Boyd. Faye Seaman is on harp, and our very own in-house mezzo-soprano, Cindy Steele. And I just want to point out that the insert in your order of service contains 2 poems that will be sung for the hymn later on. So please take note of the announcements in the back of your order of service. And at this time, does anyone have any announcements related to the fellowship that they would like to share? And the microphone will find you if you do.
Good morning, Bruce Nelson, and one of the jobs we have to do today is to adjust the angle of our solar array to the angle of the sun. So I will need 2 volunteers, and let's do it just after you've had a cup of coffee and a treat. Then we'll go out and do that and come back for the talk back. I'm assuming there's going to be one.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good morning. Jane Wise, here to tell you about the food pantry. I went yesterday, and there was lots of soup, lots of canned vegetables, lots of cereal. Thank you very much for the cereal, because it goes quickly. Beans and pasta. There was only 2 snacks. So we need snacks for the children. Oh, did you hear the first part? Because I realize that's now on. Okay.
No, it's on.
And I'm thinking about small bottles of cooking oil also would be useful. The freezer right now is full of salmon, so we can't put anything in the freezer. And I wanted to let you know that that's a project between the Wisconsin DNR, who harvests the salmon, and then the Bailey's Harbor Fish Company processes the salmon. So that's a real contribution from them, and this is the second time I've seen it in the freezer. Also, if you want to hunt for it, there's a July 10th, 2025 Pulse article, very extensive, about the food pantries and the needs and who's using it and all kinds of things if you want to look that up and read it. So thank you again for all your contributions. And we love taking care of what you give us to help our community.
Hi, I'm Mark Richards. So many of you know that I'm involved with the Wisconsin UU State Action Network. Wednesday evening on a Zoom call, we're going to have our all-member meeting. Our special guest will be from Vote First Wisconsin, who will talk to us about open primaries and Final Five voting is what they call it. So it's ranked voting.
Rank order.
So anyway, they're going to talk to us about that as a possibility and give us an update on progress of that legislation through our legislature. If you don't get the Woosan newsletter, you'll need a Zoom link. Let me know.
Hi, Trish Black from the Caring Committee. And as it is on the back of the order of service, this Thursday is our octogenarian annual celebration, honoring those folks who have turned 80 this last year. So it is really an awesome event. If you haven't been before, I encourage you, but we need numbers because we provide lunch, we set out table service, we hate for somebody to show up and we don't have a seat set for you. So I have the official sign up that I've garnered from either text messages, phone calls, or the response to our Caring Committee email address. So if you want to double check to see if you're on the list or you want to sign up, please see me after church.
Good morning, this is Anna Knapp. On Tuesday, September 16th from 6:30 until 8 p.m. at the Cress, there is a presentation being sponsored by Northern Door Activism and Indivisible, and this is entitled Funding Our Future, How Your Tax Dollars Fund Door County Public Schools. This is a great opportunity for you to find out the reality about private school vouchers and how this impacts our state. So please come out if you can.
Okay, thank you. I have two announcements. One, next Sunday after service, or actually even during service, our community partners from the Northern Door Children's Center, the Climate Change Coalition of Door County, and the Housing Partnership will be joining us because we are going to present them with their checks from last year's fundraising drive to support their efforts. So they will be, a representative from each group will be here during service, but immediately following service, before we do talk back next week, we're going to try and get an amazing photo op out in front of the fellowship with them getting their big fake checks, and then they'll get their smaller real checks. So just wanted to give everybody a heads up that that is the plan for next week. And next week is also third Sunday. And then just a reminder, coffee break in the gathering room after service, and then after about 15 minutes, we will come back here today for our talk back with Karen. So let us begin our service. And I invite Cindy Nelson to come up and light our chalice while I read some words by Francis Kazar. And I want to point out that we have a candle already lit up here. That's an extra candle for our dear friend, a dear friend of this fellowship, Phil Sweet, who passed on Thursday. We light this chalice this morning to remind us of the power and beauty of balance and contrast. It is darkness that can make the flame of a single candle so powerful, and light that deepen those shadows in turn. A chalice flame is the meeting point, the union of refuge, safety, and incredible beauty of darkness, and the warmth, the assurance, and the joy of light. May this act of lighting our chalice this morning remind us that we are stronger together in all the complexities and the disagreements of relationship because we are different and because we are one. Thank you, Cindy. Please rise as you are able for our unison affirmation and doxology. We gather together to seek knowledge and wisdom, to explore freely the vast reaches of mind and spirit, to celebrate within a caring community those truths, ancient and modern, which give meaning and direction to our lives. Let songs of hope and faith arise. Let peace, goodwill on earth be sung. In every land, by every tongue. Now is the time in the service when you may briefly share a joy that fills your heart or a concern that might weigh heavily on you. And keep in mind the service is recorded. If you are sharing information about somebody else, please only do so if you have their permission. Any joys, concerns? Okay.
Julie Newman here. I visited with Jerry Friedberg last night. On Friday evening, she fell in her home and sprained her ankle. Her ankle looks terrible. She did not want to go to urgent care, but she gave me permission to tell you about this and said that she would welcome phone calls, although you have to wait a while for her to get to the phone.
Mark Richards again. I just want to share my feelings about the passing of Phil Sweet. He was a real large influence on me when I came to Door County. I worked with him on several cases. A lot of people that I met said, "Oh, we don't need a chaplain, we have Phil Sweet." And later on, I learned that Phil and I went to the same seminary, about 30 years apart. But he was a powerful force in Door County, and we are truly going to miss him.
Okay. It is now time for the offertory and time to remember that this community exists because we care for it together. Let us give now as we are able in the spirit of generosity and gratitude. The world is often filled with noise, and silence can feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. It is in the quiet that we often hear the most important things. And as we continue this sacred time together, let us pause for a moment of silence and enter the stillness together as we prepare for today's speaker.
Well, good morning, everyone. It has been a very long time since I've been here, I think, right? Too long. I've been busy. So it's been quite a week. How about we all just sort of take a big, deep breath together and let it go. It's been a lot. So our reading today comes from poet and teacher Mark Nepo, and an interesting collaboration, unbeknownst, about a bird in a storm. From across the centuries, this nameless voice tells us that at the heart of struggle, there is a peaceful, enduring center if we can only reach it. All the wisdom traditions affirm this. Still, a deeper paradox of life is revealed here, for the gull flies through the peaceful center, but it doesn't live there. The work, it seems, is for us to draw sustenance from that central eternal space, without denying the experience of the storm. Repeatedly, we are thrown into the storm and into the center, when in the storm we are frustrated by our humanness, when in the center we are relieved by our spiritual place in the oneness of things. So to find the center and spread our battered wings is to feel the God within us. And in life, we feel the constant struggle of living both sides of this paradox. For we can't get through to the center without going through the storm that surrounds it. The storm can only be survived from the center. In how we pass each other from storm to center to back again, that is where you'll find the trials and the gifts of love. So I've often said to all of you, whenever I come up here to step up to this lectern, I'm really just coming up sharing things that befuddle me. Truthfully, I'm just talking to myself, trying to sort out this complicated and beautiful dance that we do together as humans, and I do so again today. Since our current president was reelected, like many of you, I would guess, I've been very puzzled by why this happened. Please know I don't believe in conspiracy theories about rigged elections. I trust my polling places and all the beautiful people who volunteer there, and I bet this room holds many of you. My puzzlement is due more to the fact that we have been to this rodeo before. The country knew who he was and how he operated, and he continued to show us the very same things during his campaigns. Excuse me. So holding that, I struggle with why people voted for him the second time, and why were new voters drawn to him as well. It seemed mind-boggling to me. And I know we've talked about this before when I've been here, that a lot of you have friends and neighbors and family members who voted for the current president, just like me. And these are people we see, and these are people we interact with, and these are people we love. And so because of this, I really wanted to understand their thinking. And I've had open, respectful conversations with them, and they've helped some, but I feel like many of the issues that they would raise up were things like the economy or immigration. And that just seemed a bit too simplistic to me. It all felt a little deeper than that. And no, I think along with you too, that I truly believe that many conservatives are decent, kind people. I'm sure you feel the same way. They are not this massive, crazy people that the media is trying to sell us on. So I wanted to understand their choice with dignity and respect. I really don't believe we can lump them all together. And truth be told, even after some of the horrible things that occurred even this last week, I still believe deep in my heart that the majority of people out there are good. And they're just trying to do their very best. Especially those people we know who are conservative, who are close to us, maybe raised in our same childhood homes, those who live next door to us and have helped us cut down fallen trees or lent us sugar or celebrated family events alongside us for years. And maybe I am naive, but my work as a hospice chaplain showed me that in times of loss, in times of trouble, people can be more lovely than you can ever imagine. Even in the most messed up of families, grace and patience and love prevail as families would gather to release their loved ones. Of course, there are those families that can't find their way back to each other during those times, but to be honest, that's not as common. Because my work allowed me into such sacred spaces with families, and because I've seen this play out time and time again, I hold this belief that most people are good and trying to do their very best, very close to my bones. So holding that, I began to do some research. Of course, my very favorite expert on human behavior is Dr. Brené Brown, who's a research professor at the University of Houston, and she's authored 5 incredible books on courage, vulnerability, shame, and empathy. One of her books, Atlas of the Heart, became my go-to text for this talk, so you'll hear me mention her name quite a bit. Atlas of the Heart is a book that looks at our emotions, and it helps us to really understand and identify them more clearly. It's been a real game changer for me in terms of understanding the complexities of our emotions. So I'll give you a perfect example of how this changed for me. I've always been somebody who gets involved either in my work life or in volunteer work. I like to get involved and help whenever I can, but often I'd find myself working with a team of people who would have some members who would say things like, well, I can't be there on Saturday. I have another commitment. Or I can only give you this much time. And I used to get kind of frustrated with that. In fact, the old me would be very frustrated and feel like those people really weren't pulling their own weight. As I read Atlas of the Heart, Brown made it clear to me that the real feeling that I was having wasn't anger or frustration at all. It was jealousy. I was jealous that those people were able to set boundaries around their time, and they kept those boundaries. That was something I wasn't so good at. With this new way of seeing what I really felt toward these people, I realized I was angry and frustrated at myself, not at them, because I was terrible at setting my own boundaries. This realization changed everything. And now I'm proud to say that I'm way better at doing that when I understood that this was something I really wanted, and I was jealous of those who claimed it so readily. So I turned to this book again to solve this puzzlement around folks who voted for our president. I was drawn to Brown's research on the emotion of nostalgia. It seemed to fit what's going on with conservatives. The very rally cry of Make America Great Again is drenched in nostalgia. Brown defines nostalgia as a yearning for the ways things used to be in our often idealized and self-protected version of the past. Those words, idealized and self-protected, are key to how any one of us hold on to nostalgia. I never really thought about nostalgia being an emotion. I thought it was just something you looked back on and you felt good about. But Brown says that when we have feelings of nostalgia, we're placing ourselves in the center of a story in which we reminisce about people, places, or events. We aren't thinking about other people's emotions or reflections of those times, just our very own. Our nostalgic memories can make us feel better and make us feel maybe even a little bit more whole. We understood ourselves in those times when we look back. But across Brown's research, nostalgia emerged as a double-edged sword for both connection and disconnection. It can serve, as I suspect for many people, as an imaginary refuge from a world they don't understand anymore. And let's admit it, we're all kind of feeling that way, aren't we? Nostalgia can also be a dog whistle. It can be used to resist programs or events or things that don't make sense to us or changes that we feel are unneeded, or it can even be used to protect those in power. And I'm being careful not to use this idea for liberals or conservatives here, because I think all people share this desire for nostalgia, and this feeling goes both ways. Brown shares these examples. What might be said out loud? I wish things were the way they used to be in the good old days. But what's not spoken are thoughts like when people knew their place, or when there was no accountability for how my actions affected other people, or when authority was absolute or rarely challenged. Those words felt a little true to me. And I began to see that many folks who voted for our current president felt those expressions to be true. But then I also thought back to what we often thought of traditional child rearing or even appropriate punishments within families and even schools in the 60s and 70s. Many parents would rule with absolute authority. Because I said so were words that even came from my mouth as I parented. Spanking and hitting children back when I was a child was fairly common. The current president rules like an angry father, even treating fellow leaders or other members of his administration like children, threatening them with punishments if they don't abide with what he wants. Carol Swain, a political scientist who studies race in America, says that the president's blunt descriptions of our country's problems have a broad appeal. He can offend some, but for other people, they find his bluntness refreshing. I just saw a poll last week that said the majority of Americans like how Trump is handling immigration. Like a John Wayne character who doesn't have to follow the rules in a rough and tumble Western, many people like the idea that our president is tough and he runs roughshod over things he doesn't like or understand. And I suspect for many of his supporters, this is what they wish they could do too. And yet, is nostalgia for this kind of character good? Researcher Sandra Garrido says that nostalgia can be part of both a healthy and unhealthy coping strategy. Often folks who focus on nostalgia also struggle with rumination. Garrido explains rumination as an involuntary focus on negative and pessimistic thoughts. Have you had any negative or pessimistic thoughts lately? Politically, rumination can be a breeding ground for conspiracy theories, the spreading of fake news on both sides, and the creation of unfounded fears. Sadly, I think most everyone misses responsible and professional journalism. We are bombarded with AI images that appear to be real. Social media and our news algorithms send us news they determine we like. And many of us on both sides never question what we're being told. So then the responsibility of researching what we're told falls in our laps, which for many of us feels exhausting. I know all of us have nostalgia for days when the media was held accountable, when we felt we could trust the talking heads who shared the day's events with us each night. But now that statement almost seems laughable. Garrido says that the level of divisiveness, uncertainty, and anxiety in the world today leads us all to ruminate. I know I've been doing it. It often occurs at night when I'm worried about things that I've been doing or just how bad things can get when I get together with friends. That's often our rumination. How bad will this get? Brene Brown shares that the combination of rumination and nostalgia can be destructive and disconnecting. She literally shares these words in her book. If you're wondering how dangerous this combination can be, think back to the insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th. The insurrectionists were seduced into believing that a make-believe past could exist again. Nostalgia. I had to sit with this information for a while. I sat with the thoughts shared with me by family and neighbors that are in line with some of his thinking, and I thought I saw some truth. Wanting to go back and make America great again. Maybe to discontinue programming that celebrated all of our differences and focus more on unity. To deny rights to trans and LGBTQ folks, to restrict reproductive rights to women, to close our borders to immigrants. All of these things in some people's mind may feel like it could help our country be what it used to be. Perhaps back to a time when we understood things easier, where we knew what roles people played. We had less responsibility to understand all of those differences. I suspect for many it felt more comfortable, less confusing. I can remember some of those days. I grew up in the 60s and 70s. I had a math teacher who regularly hit a tough kid who talked back in our class. Yet none of us told another teacher or the principal, because in our world, we were taught our teachers had power over us. Roles were more defined. Life seemed simpler, more respectful, maybe due to that fear, but it didn't make it right. But are our family and friends who support this president seeking to return to a time that made sense to them? And if so, is that inherently bad? Was there a sense of goodness to some of those memories? I think for many conservatives, and even for some of us, this may feel slightly true. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that you and I, we too sit here holding another piece of nostalgia. Instead, our good old days were administrations that welcomed diversity and constantly challenged us to try hard, to use the right language and words for people. We celebrated immigrants and how historically they were and are the backbone of our country. And at the same time, we were challenged by different traditions, new holidays, and different languages being spoken around us. We look back to the fight for women's reproductive rights, and we celebrated the victory of Roe v. Wade. My mind goes to the Obama administration, and when the Supreme Court recognized gay marriage as a legal right for the entire country, allowing all people to marry who they love. We felt this was just and right, and it felt like we were letting go of old labels that just didn't work for us anymore. Sometimes it was confusing. Sometimes we didn't even have the language yet for it, but it felt like progress. Most of us here feel that what's going on now is not normal. In fact, that's the rally cry of so many opinion pieces I read in the New York Times or the Washington Post. But Brené Brown's definition of our nostalgia for those times is exactly the same. It's a yearning for the way things used to be in our often idealized and self-protected version of the past. I strongly support women's reproductive rights and actively support Planned Parenthood's efforts to protect abortion. But the truth is, it's always been a very sticky issue. I've often said no one wants to have an abortion. It only comes after painful decision-making, decisions that are not ours to make for anyone else. But then I doubt most of us here would cheer for abortion to serve as casual birth control. The issue is more complex than most of us can imagine. Solutions lie in education and providing proper tools for women and couples so that they have more control over their reproductive systems. But then religion can rear its powerful head and add a whole other element into the discussion. It has never been as simple as making abortion legal. But today our nostalgia tells us that it is or it was, if we could only go back to when it was legal across the country. And the same goes for immigration. It's always been an enormous challenge for any president. Now we have someone beating the bushes to capture anyone who might be here illegally, and even those who are legal, and usually without providing them with legal representation, which is horrifying and it's unconstitutional. But when our borders were more open, folks escaping persecution from their home countries often died terrible deaths. Guides promising them safe crossings often took their money and left people stranded, starving, or dead. Immigration centers were overwhelmed and struggling. Those who were able to legally navigate immigration processes took years and years to reach their goal, some having to return back, unable to work or survive here before they reached legalization. After all this time, our country never really has solved the problem of immigration. This president decided not to solve the problem, but to eliminate it. I suspect his solution will turn on us badly in the next year or two, when crops rot in the field, when employees have less people to hire in factories, service industry jobs, and with elderly people and child care. As someone who taught special ed and worked in hospice, I worry that those populations will return to the good old days when we warehoused the disabled and we warehoused the elderly. I admit this mess we are in right now as a country politically is huge. The reputation we have created with other countries may be damaged that we're untangling for decades. The setbacks environmentally will only increase already alarming situations. Human rights violations today will have deep repercussions tomorrow, and the opportunities for political violence has increased tenfold. This has become our storm, the storm we have to go through, just like our reading by Mark Nepo stated. These issues today are huge, and sadly, other than calling them out, protesting or writing or calling my political representatives, it feels so enormous and out of my hands. And I'm not telling you to accept the violence or the bullying or the lies or the dangerous decision-making. I can't and I won't. These are things we must continue to call out and stand up against. But I share my words with you today to see if they might help you to understand the folks that you know and love who chose to vote for this administration. For the people in my life, in my family, in my neighborhood, in my exercise classes at the Y that I care for, well, that's where this idea of so desperately clinging to nostalgia seems to resonate with me. I'm sure it's just a small piece of many other issues that cause us to vote differently and cause us to think differently. But I found a small truth in it, and I brought it to you today to see if it might resonate with you as well, as you consider your friends and your neighbors and your loved ones who have supported this administration. Because truthfully, I need to cling to the hope that these people who I love, who I've grown up with and shared meals with or laughed and played games on cold winter nights, I have to believe that these are not the conservative monsters that we've all created in our minds. To keep my own sanity, I have to hold to this truth that they too, just like me, are looking for a nostalgia, for a time when things made sense to them. In realizing that nostalgia is a yearning for the way things used to be in our own often and most certainly self-protected version of the past, helps me to ultimately see that we are both liberal and conservative, seeking something we believed was good and something we believed was worth holding on to. Perhaps it was never as wonderful as we remembered it. It never really is. But I suspect we all have a desire to find our way back somehow. And after hearing that our president is not interested in uniting us, I believe it's up to us to work on that. My words today may offer you a different insight into the wild puzzlement of why people we love and know chose this path through the storm. Perhaps a nostalgia for what we believe to be true pulls us on different paths. But can we hold both understandings of what was good to be true? Is this how we and our loved ones can pass each other from storm to center and back again? Because I believe that this is where, with work and also understanding, I hope we can find the trials and gifts of love as we work through this storm. May it be so.
Please join in singing hymn 1029, Love Knocks and Waits for Us to Hear. As we come to the close of our time together and I extinguish our chalice, I invite you to carry with you the spirit of this hour. I think Karen's message reminds us, in a sense, that everyone finds solace in memories that make us feel safe. We all want to feel safe and secure, and perhaps that shared value is a path to understanding one another better.